I was all excited, Daryl. Never had a congressional dinner here before. But that has happened to every person that has ever tried to do anything. You know, the person that's never made a mistake, the person that's never done anything. So we're grateful for all of those, because making announcements is the most sought after job. I know. I'm sitting here going, oh, did I just make that worse? That was not my intention, brother. You know that. We're looking for a few good individuals that will step up and do that. I kind of introduced the lesson tonight, and it just dawned on me when I said I was starting this series tonight that it'll actually be 2 lessons, and then I'll be at a gospel meeting in Tennessee the 4th Sunday of this month, and then the 5th Sunday this month we'll be at Center Grove. So it's the initial 2 lessons of a series of being like, or having the heart, the eyes, the ears, the mind, and the voice of Jesus. And we're going to start out with having his eyes. These aren't his, these are just really cool eyes. When you think about the eyes and the incredible nature of that one organ in our body, and trying to think of your eye, and the very simplistic look at it of the pupil that's in the middle, and the iris that makes everybody unique, and the sclera outside. And there are various things, a lot of things can be told by individuals looking at your eyes. Bobby's told me, Bobby Grigsby, Dr. C is actually my optometrist, but there with Bobby, and many of you have gone to see Bobby Grigsby over at the Optometric Eye Care in Salisbury. You can tell a lot. In fact, Bobby has detected cancer early on. By looking into the eyes of individuals and been able to help them find it very early detection. The eyes, the Bible says, are the window of the soul. They're very complex as you diagram there and look at it. My pointer wasn't working. I tried to get that thing to look at it, because one of the things I was really concerned about this, and some of you even are dealing with that, and that's the retina there that you see. Right after, 3 years ago when I got thumped in the eye at camp, and I went to the optometrist. I couldn't see initially, and that was very concerning to me because the impact that had occurred right below my eye, and my retina was bruised. And Bobby watched it very closely for several weeks, because his concern was at the potential of it detaching. When that retina detaches, your eyesight goes. And that is a concerning thing. When the body can't get that information, when it can't access the information in. Eye facts are interesting. I'm going to share a few with you. Some of you probably know these. About half of our brain is involved in the seeing process. Many electrical impulses are involved and are ignited anytime we open our eyes, and all of that information floods in. Some scientists consider the eyes a part of the brain because of their interconnection. The cornea is the only living tissue in the human body that does not contain any blood vessels. That's why they can cut it. And it doesn't really impact. It can adjust it and change and shape, and the lens as well. Now when you look, all babies are born colorblind. I did not know that. I knew that from at least babies don't see the difference in individuals, and children don't even see that, but they're born colorblind. When they're born, their eyes do not produce tears until the baby's approximately 6 to 8 weeks old. Your eyes are the same size from birth. That's the good news. Bad news, your ears and your nose keeps growing. Average person blinks 12 times per minute, about 10,000 blinks in an average day, and 10 million times a year. And some individuals who are blinking is the lubrication of the eye, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. And your eyes begin to develop 2 weeks after conception. Are composed of more than 2 million working parts and processes 36,000 bits of information an hour. I didn't break that down to what's a gig or whatever byte set is upon the information. But they process so much information. The incredible lens process and the production process in our brain is all of that's assessed. Under the right conditions, you can discern the light of a candle at a distance of 14 miles. Can pick that up. Eyes are amazing. Various illusions make us see things we don't think that we're seeing. How many legs does this elephant have? Some of you are going to way overanalyze this and look at it, because at the initial look, people usually say 5. No, an elephant only has 4. but it's just a visual illusion. The artist has taken a chance at making more than one leg looking like thing. There's only 4 legs. Illusions are interesting. Some of them, we can't figure them out when we're looking at them going, how in the world did they do that? Aren't the people supposed to be above the shoes? Or is this upside down? You'll have to determine that after you probably have seen this one. Or this one, simple one. What do you see? This is one of those things that when you go to a psychiatrist, they start showing you images and you get really concerned about, okay, what I see, what does that say about me? Because immediately you see the candlestick, maybe, or some of you probably saw the 2 faces facing each other first, because you've seen this one before and you cheated. One of my favorite ones, I remember the first time I ever saw this one. And ask me later what this says about you as a person. I'll tell you what a psychologist told me. Now, whether it was accurate or not. But who is this? You've seen both of these people. You're going, both of these people? Because some of you immediately saw Albert Einstein. Squint. Marilyn Monroe shows up. It's really cool when you squint. But now some people see her first. Ask me later what that means about you psychologically. I'll let you worry about that the rest of the afternoon. When you're considering Jesus' eyes, I'm going to look at 4 areas that I'm going to assess the way he saw things. I talked this morning in kind of an introductory way about us needing to see people the way Jesus saw people, and I think that is a very important way to kind of see. But Jesus, he had several things that I want to say were like views or ways he looked at things. The way he viewed opportunity. In Matthew chapter 5, open your Bibles there, we're going to look at a couple of passages. And this is not the only moment that this occurs, and there's several other moments where it makes reference to what Jesus sees in his responding action. But in Matthew 5, verse 1, it begins, as you get there, Matthew 5, verse 1. Then they came on the other side of the sea to the country of the Gadarenes. I'm in Mark, that's why that doesn't sound right. See, Daryl? Everybody makes a mistake. Matthew 5, and seeing the multitudes, that makes more sense about what I'm talking about. He went up on a mountain. When he was seated, his disciples came to him. Then he opened his mouth and taught them, saying. When Jesus saw people, he saw opportunities. There are other times he's standing outside the city of Jerusalem. I should have put down several passages, but I'll share a couple just from memory. As he stood outside the city and he saw them as sheep without a shepherd. He saw them another time and he said he looked upon them with compassion. You see, if we look at people the way that Jesus looked at people, and especially we see the opportunities that are before us. Frank mentioned even in his prayer of us looking at the opportunities to share the truth with individuals and opening our eyes to those opportunities. If we don't look for opportunities, we won't see them. But Jesus had an incredible ability to see an opportunity to share or an opportunity to serve in every situation that he saw. Because he saw in people, he knew the needs of people, and he knew the fact that he looked at them with compassion. And if you'll notice, even tomorrow, I'm kind of going to give you an application of each one of these ways that we look at individuals. Tomorrow, look for an opportunity to be Jesus for somebody. Some way, somehow. Whatever it may be, it may be a meaning way. It may be opening the door for someone. It may be helping someone pick something up. It may be even asking someone how their day is and giving them an opportunity. It may be that everything's going okay, or it may be that they need somebody just to vent to. They need to share what's going on. There may be some struggle. Sometimes we don't ask how are things because we don't want to know. But if we ask, genuinely wanting to know and pausing and taking the time to listen to what might be going on and looking for an opportunity. Maybe they'll say something that triggers a way that you can help the situation they're in. Maybe you'll listen for something that they say to trigger a way you can do something that will show them that you're thinking about them later in the week, later in the month. By dropping them some quick note, a text, Facebook message, even a card. It says, I'm thinking about what you shared with me, and I just want to let you know I'm still thinking about that and thinking of you. The way he took advantage of the opportunities that he saw. Now, I know some of you will come to me with, yeah, but I'm not Jesus. You don't have to be. We need to try to be. And we need to do everything within our power. And literally, that's what Jesus did. He just had a lot more power than we do. But the way he viewed opportunity, he looked for reasons to do things for people. And then did something. One of the things I've really committed to more so, because I've done this and I didn't intentionally do it. Have you ever told someone, I'll pray for you, and you didn't? I'm maybe the only one that's ever done that. But I've consciously made a commitment to myself, or even if I shoot a note, because that happens a lot on Facebook. You'll notice a situation going on, you'll send prayers. I'll either pause just at that moment, I'll immediately go to my phone and I'll set a time to pray for that particular situation. Because we're so busy. And it's real easy to miss opportunity. Just like Frank said, we can catch ourselves in a moment. Somebody will say something and we'll walk away, and before we realize, I think. So maybe consciously say, I want to try to be more active in doing and being responsive to an opportunity that I see. Jesus' view of several things changed the way the world forever has looked at that particular thing. One in specifics is death. I mentioned this morning from the writer in Hebrews that he overcame him who had the power of death to deliver those who all their lives had been held in bondage to the fear of death. But look at Mark 5, and this is one of the initial moments that Jesus stepped into a situation like this. One of the things I've said for years when individuals ask me about memorials or funerals or celebrations of life as they're becoming more and more called, the Bible doesn't give a lot of information as to how those things are supposed to play out. Because in the New Testament, what we have is Jesus interrupting every funeral he ever showed up at. You ever thought about that? He never delivered a eulogy. Jesus never preached a funeral that I'm familiar with in the Bible. He shows up at Lazarus's after the fact. But here in this situation in Mark chapter 5, beginning in verse 38, here's what occurs. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw tumult and those who wept and wailed loudly. When he came in, he said to them, why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping. They ridiculed him. Now we look at this after the fact and go, that's Jesus. What are you thinking? You don't say, knowing the child's dead. They knew the child was dead. Already been declared dead. None of us, you wouldn't think about walking into any situation where where the physician had already been there and the pronouncement had already occurred and say, they're just asleep. It would be rude. It would be awful. And they ridicule Jesus. But when he had put them all outside, he took the father and mother of the child and those who were with him and entered where the child was laying, took the child by the hand, said to her, Talitha Kumai, which is translated, little girl, I say to you, arise. Immediately the girl arose and walked. She was 12 years of age. They were overcome with great amazement. I don't know if there was any other words that they could express that, John. If you had a child that was dead, what would be the words? But he commanded them strictly that no one should know it, and said that something should be given her to eat. Y'all know me, sometimes I overthink things. How are you going to keep this one quiet? What's the father and mother going to say? Jesus came in, she woke up. Now, I may be overstating this, that they already declared that she's gone, that she's dead. And then you could say, well, maybe she was just in a coma or in some state of, I'm not sure. But in this particular context, Jesus says something, his view of death and the way he lived forever changed, and it should change our view of death. It is, for the Christian, just sleep. It's a time of rest. It's a separation temporarily. One of the great blessings of our walk with God are the promises that Jesus has made to his disciples. Because I have overcome, because I have risen, you will live as well. I am the resurrection and the life. Promise he made in John 15. So his view of opportunity, his view of death, also his view of faith. Jesus had a view of faith. He makes observations over and over again about other individuals' faith. There's at least 3 of those in specifics. One of the neatest ones in Matthew chapter 8, where he shares his view of faith. Matthew chapter 8, beginning in verse 5. Now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him pleading with him, saying, Lord, my servant is at home paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. And Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard it, he marveled, and said to those who followed, as surely I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. And I say to you, that many will come from the east and the west and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go your way, and as you have believed, so let it be done for you. And his servant was healed from that same hour. Now here's one of the passages that some individuals in the religious world use for faith healing. Well, see, the reason that servant was healed is because the individual had faith. But there are multiple episodes where Jesus heals someone. There's no faith involved. Jesus steps in and just heals them because he had that power, and it was that strong. But here he acknowledges something about what he sees in this man's faith, who says, you don't even have to be near him. In fact, you just say the word and he'll be healed. That to me also makes it very interesting the way Jesus healed the leper in other healing episodes. He didn't have to touch the leper, but he did. Jesus heals in a way, in this case, I want to say he's going to heal the individual either way. But here he makes a statement. Just say the word. His view of faith is total trust. Because that's what he saw in the centurion. The centurion said, you don't have to do anything special. You're Jesus, just say it. What's your view of your faith? Do I, on a regular basis, trust Jesus with my life? Can it go back? It kind of leans back even to that fear of death concept of the whole thing. If I totally trust God, you know, there's the one psalm that says, if I give God that kind of trust, what can man do to me? Nothing in reality. Oh, he can kill me. He can torture me. Make my life miserable. He can do all sorts of, he can humiliate me. But can he harm me in the fullest sense of the word as far as my spirit, my soul, what is truly my essence and who I'm going to be for eternity? No. And so Jesus' view of death is, this world is not our home. We are just passing through. One of the songs that has the concept of, open the eyes of my heart, Lord, open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. And I guess the ultimate question in faith is, do you see Jesus? The song that we sing, have you seen Jesus my Lord? And as you kind of move through that song, if you'll note, you can see him in the wind, or you can see him in the waves, or you can see him in the eyes of a brother or sister, and you can see him on the cross. And any one of those places where you see him, it validates your faith. And it lets you live in a way that shows, I absolutely trust God, and I'm going to do what he wants me to do. Because that's what Jesus saw in this individual's view of his faith. Jesus had a different view of suffering and of struggle. His own, in Mark 8, he shares an interesting observation about suffering. Mark 8, beginning verse 31. And this is what he was teaching his disciples. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spake this word openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. There's another moment that he references in John 15. I want to put both of these out there in your thought and then make an observation. John 15, beginning of verse 18. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they also will persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also. Jesus just throwing a principle out there. If you do what I did, they'll treat you the way they treated me. Now, there are parts of the world where this is absolutely true. There are parts of the world where Christians are still persecuted in the same way they were in the first century. Their lives are on the line, and they're harmed and beaten and imprisoned for just being Christians. Hasn't happened yet in America. When you think of the first century and think of the context in which this was written, the context in which Jesus shared this thought that he shared, his view of suffering is, because Paul's words in his own, I count it all joy that I was made worthy to suffer for the name of Christ. Worthy to suffer for the name of Christ. There are probably some in this audience that have felt that kind of suffering. I'm not talking about maybe a moment of humiliation, which can be a measure of suffering. I'm talking about Jesus saying that if we say the right thing, if we do the right thing, eventually someone is going to mistreat us because of what we say or do. It is our willingness to have that view of suffering, that it's an honor, that it's glorifying to God because we're doing the right thing. Peter will say, if any man suffers a Christian, let him glorify God in that behalf. And to praise God for the opportunity to be one of those who has suffered for the cause of Christ. Even after. Because I remember telling you all the story of the end of the year before Caleb got cancer, and he and I were having that discussion with each other, the fact that he and I, neither one had ever faced any kind of suffering or persecution. Still haven't faced anything of the nature a lot of individuals have, and I still don't consider that journey, his or ours, one of persecution by just simply doing the right thing, because cancer is not something that has that as a result of it. Cancer has no select whether Christian or non-Christian. So do we live our lives in a powerful enough way that we place the opportunity to suffer for Him? Do we avoid anything to keep us from having to suffer for the name of Christ? I think those are valid questions to ask ourselves. And to say, have I ever risked anything greatly for the cause of Christ? Not only had a view of His purpose, several passages we're going to look at here. In fact, I wanted to look at several, and then we'll kind of get, because y'all have been very patient with this. Matthew 5:17, I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. And you know what He's talking about. Here's the law and the prophets. His purpose wasn't to put away the old law, but it was to fulfill the old law. He also would say in Matthew 10:34, I did not come to bring peace but a sword. That's a fairly interesting little challenge that Jesus puts out there. He is the Prince of Peace. He's come that he overcame the world, but he said, I didn't come to make it easy. In fact, this same context is where he said, I've come to set a father against his child, a mother against her daughter. Those of the same household in conflict with each other. Our willingness to stand up for truth, our willingness to do the right thing regardless of what that might cost, which puts us in that place sometimes of being the individuals who don't bring peace but a sword, is also as a view of he came to seek and to save that which was lost. That was his mission in life. His view of his purpose was so focused. He was tunnel visioned, if you would, that he could see the tomb at the end of all of this and know that is my goal because I'm going to come out of there victorious. John 6:38, he came to do the will of him who sent me. And I think a very appropriate question for us in view of our purpose is, whose will am I doing in my life? Am I aware of the will of God in my life? Is it a daily part of my decisions that they may have life and have it to the full? Christianity, by some, is looked on as a boring lifestyle. But lived to its fullest, it's exhilarating. Lived to its fullest, it takes us places. Ask individuals who have traveled and done the mission work that individuals have done and the various locations they've gone and the experiences that they've had. So the opportunities that you've had to see individuals' lives totally transformed. I think that's what he meant when he told individuals, when they looked at the individuals after his miracles and said, you'll do greater things than these. I'm finally starting to understand what that means when you see individuals' lives who are headed to hell and that's changed and they're now headed toward heaven. Individuals whose lives have impacted countless individuals every summer at Carolina Bible Camp. And I can say that now because of the longevity of it. I've seen this for a 30-year period. Lives are transformed. Differences are made. And it is none telling, just from there alone, the impact of salvation that has occurred. Individuals' lives, even their goals of where they're going to go to school and where eventually they're going to spend the rest of their lives have been changed because of a spiritual decision made and the influence that God has had in those kids' lives and in those adults' lives and on that goes. View of a significant fullness of life. How do we develop his view? How do we get his eyes? I tried to find the source of this. I found it and I couldn't find the source. Jesus viewed life differently because he saw the word with spiritual vision. You've heard people talk about 21st century glasses. I want to suggest if we could get some spiritual glasses. You know, that when you put them on, you saw people's soul. You talk about color blindness. Souls have no color. Souls have no designation. They are the God image in its fullness. A desperate spirit, a soul looking for its final destination. And God's ultimate desire for all of those are heaven. He is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to newness of life. He saw things that others missed, and his vision directed his life. I'm not saying that Jesus had soul vision, although I believe he did. But I think it's that ability that once we look at people the way Jesus looked at people, do you think that would change the way we treat people? I really do. I think that we would not see a lot of the things that get in the way of actually seeing people, whether it be their appearance or their attitude or their accolades or whatever else you want to throw in there about individuals. It gives us various perceptions of their life. We could see them the way Jesus saw them. And we can ask Him for that vision. And Lord, help me see people the way You saw people. Help me to be empathetic, and help me to be engaging, and help me to be an individual that helps individuals. And when I see something they're struggling with, to help them out of that. Not to judge them because of what they're doing, but try to help them be better. Because too many times we judge before we help, and it hinders our helping. What is your focus? I hate eye charts. Ever since I didn't fail an eye chart, I actually failed the driving test. Not the written part. But I failed the sign test. I was sitting there, and I didn't have glasses at that time. And he said, "What sign is that?" And I said, "What sign?" It was that moment that the individual knew, you can't see real good. Found out I'm legally blind in my left eye. And that machine was set up so that both eyes had to be functioning. Lord, give us vision to see life the way Jesus did. To have whatever needs, because sometimes you have to correct your vision. I wear contacts. I wear one for distance, one for close up. One of those fortunate individuals, that works for me. If we could put on spiritual glasses, if we could put on spiritual contacts that gave us His vision, how well would that work? I hope maybe tonight, just in this initial thought of trying to be like Jesus, that you want to have His eyes. You know, a lot of individuals say when they see people, say, well, you have your father's eyes or you have your mother's eyes. I think one of the greatest compliments we could ever be given. You got Jesus' eyes. If we could assist you tonight in initial penitent faith, confession, and baptism, if we could assist you with something that's going on in your world that just needs prayers, or maybe there's something you need our help with, that's why we have this song, that's why we have this moment. Would you come as we stand and as we sing?